folks, we are going to court. The Mountain West and the Pac-12 have failed to reach a settlement agreement during mediation. This is huge news. There are high stakes. Conferences are on the line. I'm going to break it down for you. This is the Let's Run podcast. Guys, welcome into the show today. Pretty remarkable that we are doing 2 episodes in one day. I guess I should have probably foreseen that as we released the UTEP episode of the Conference Realignment series. Had a lot of good comments on that. Next will be Oregon State. I'll be talking about them probably tomorrow, I think. Late tomorrow will be when that episode is released. Guys, while you are here in the channel, please do like the video. Please do subscribe. This Conference Realignment series is really fun. Having a great time doing it, having fun covering all of this. And, you know, we got in what I would consider to be pretty discouraging news, and not necessarily discouraging for either party, although there are positives, negatives, there are arguments on each side of this, which is part of the reason why both sides want to take it to trial, because they really do feel like they have a point. It's not good news. It's not a good thing that this is going to trial. Because you have to understand what the risks of going to trial are. When you go to trial, you are putting the fate of your conferences, of your schools, of your financial situations in the hands of a judge. Once you in settlement, in mediation, you have control over that. And today, July 15th, was seen as it was officially. The schools either had to say, hey, we're going to try and work this out over, they could have gotten an extension on mediation, or they could have come to a mediation, or they could do what they're doing and go to trial. July 15th was kind of set as the end date. That was just to keep the process kind of expedient so that they weren't in mediation for a year and a half. That's why they give them dates on these things. And ultimately, the 2 conferences came to the decision, and it does seem like both were a part of this decision. I think that they are just too far apart. The Mountain West is wanting too much. The Pac-12 is offering too little. And therefore, they are willing to drag this out and let this hang over and kind of, I was really hoping that they would come to a settlement, and I really expected them to, because I just didn't see the upside in going into, in taking this to court. And they're not going to trial yet. That's, it's important to distinguish between going to court and going to trial. Trial means, they're getting a jury, or they're having, a bench trial. And this is just, preliminary hearings, essentially. Both sides, in preliminary hearings, there will probably be some form. I don't think they'll go into discovery yet, which is where both sides can request documents from each other. This is kind of pre that even. This is just about initial motions, essentially. The Pac-12 will file a motion to dismiss. It's going to be a motion to dismiss. Essentially, what it means is no reasonable jury or judge could come to a conclusion where the defendant would win, or vice versa. And I actually think, there might be a motion to dismiss from both sides. We don't know exactly what legal mechanisms each side is going to use in front of the judge. The date for this hearing is September 9th. What I don't know yet, and what I saw somebody say that this is just a hearing, there won't actually be a decision made on these motions on September 9th. But so I don't know if anything will be decided on September 9th, or if the motions will simply be presented in front of the judge. The case is being brought in Northern California, from my understanding. And so, there are positives, there are negatives to that. It's in a federal court in Northern California. And it's kind of fun, because studying for the bar exam right now, you look at some of this civil procedure that you're studying, and you see it being applied in the real world. What is the Pac-12 standard going to be at trial? What is the Mountain West standards going to be? I guess not at trial, but, in this preliminary hearing. Essentially, the Pac-12 is filing a motion to dismiss, or I guess the Mountain West is filing a motion to dismiss the Pac-12's claim. The Mountain West will have the responsibility as the moving party to prove that that the Pac-12 has breached the terms of their contract. This is civil, so it has to be. Actually, I'm not 100% sure. I don't want to go into the standards of proof each side is going to have to do, but essentially the Mountain West is going to have to put forth a motion saying, hey, no reasonable jury or judge could come to the conclusion that we're wrong here. Because the Mountain West is the one seeking to enforce the contract. So therefore, it's not it's a very high standard. Essentially, the court will look at the Pac-12's position in the most favorable light as the non-moving party. And again, I don't know if the Pac-12 is filing like a counter motion to dismiss, so this could get a lot messier than this. But I kind of just want to say these principles generally, so you kind of understand what's going on. The court in this pre-hearing will look in favorable terms for the Pac-12, and that's just mechanically how it works when you're filing a motion to dismiss. And so, the Mountain West's arguments are going to be that the poaching, and this is the other thing that I don't understand yet. I don't understand if this is severable from if the exit fee situation and the poaching fee situation are severable, or if they're being brought as one issue in this specific hearing. I know that they were both being negotiated in the mediation settlement stuff going on. But I don't know if this judge is going to have the power to adjudicate the exit fee claims because the Pac-12 statement, and maybe the schools, by the time that you've seen this, maybe the schools will themselves have talked about what they're going to be doing at trial in September, or in court in September, I should say, instead of trial. And so, you know, this is scary. This is scary for both of these conferences. Mediation is great because you control the terms, you control how payouts are done, you control the mechanisms, you have control, if you're willing to work with the other party, you're willing to keep control over what happens. The minute that you throw it in the hands of a judge, anything could go. And all of these hypothetical legal arguments that both sides get into online go out the window, and suddenly a judge's discretion is what matters. Um, so I've had a lot of people and I'm not an attorney yet. I mean, hopefully I will have passed the bar exam here very soon. I've had a lot of people ask me, what do I think is going to happen here? Who has the better argument? Which side has the best claim? And I don't know that I want to get into these specifics about those arguments. Essentially, the Mountain West is claiming on the exit fee side, there's two distinct legal arguments going on. One about the poaching fee side. The Mountain West basically has to prove that these poaching fees are part of a particularized loss that they're going to suffer as a result of these schools leaving the conference. Certainly, there is a loss that they're going to recover. The issue there is that loss already being compensated by the exit fees, or is it essentially acting as a double penalty, or is it a damage clause essentially tied to a specific financial loss from the Mountain West, or is that kind of a double penalty? I have from the beginning been incredibly skeptical about exit fees. I'm sorry, about poaching fees and their enforcement. Now, the Mountain West may have certain legal arguments that I'm just not aware of in terms of how the contract was signed, how it was enforced, and maybe the Mountain West does have specific particularized damages that they're claiming, and they can tie those to the poaching fees. Generally, poaching fees, it's going to depend on the discretion of this court. California courts have generally been pretty harsh against what they see as anti-competitive stuff between parties. California courts, for example, were the ringleaders in shutting down non-compete clauses. When you work for a company and then you sign an agreement with the company that if you leave the company, you can't work for another company that does the same thing within 3 years, within 100 miles. Courts are, that area of law is pretty fluid. And so I think while I personally, if I was the judge or if I was a completely third party observer, I would say, well, the poaching fees might be completely severable and might be, unconstitutional and might be, not enforceable. However, if the Mountain West is saying, okay, well, then we better get the full compensation on the exit fees. If you're saying that we're penalizing the same conduct twice, one of the penalties better have legal effect then. You know, Maybe we can't penalize the same conduct twice, but we can certainly get compensated for the same conduct at least once. And this is where the exit fees are incredibly interesting. Are they um, courts generally have not adjudicated exit fees. Exit fees, and I know everybody's always saying, "Oh, exit fees get settled down. Exit fees get settled down. And I see that all the time, and it's true. Exit fees generally get settled and lowered so that the exiting member does not have to pay as much as they were contractually obligated to pay. However, that is usually done not in the court. Usually, exit fees are settled and reduced outside of court in mediation where the parties have all the power. The minute you give it to a judge and the judge says these exit fees are owed, you have no power over how much is owed and how that's paid. And exit fees, I think, if the Mountain West is getting a $6 million distribution per member and it's $18 to leave and it's 3 years per member leaving, and there are arguments about this, but essentially, like, I don't think that while I think that the poaching fees will probably be thrown out legally, they just seem kind of dubious to me. I don't think if you're Utah State or Boise State or San Diego State or any of these schools, you want exit fees brought in front of a judge, because if the judge says so, it's over, and you don't have power and control. And if it screws over your athletic department, it screws over your athletic department. And so this is crazy, guys. I mean, like, oof. And the thing, I won't go too long on this because there's not a ton to say about it right now. And I don't even think, September 9th, while that is a date, I don't think this is going to be settled by the end of the year. This is going to be a dark cloud that hangs over these conferences, and hangs over every member of both conferences. And even if you think your side is completely right and, oh, the Mountain West has this case and there's no way the Pac-12 can argue it, it's in the hands of a judge. Your opinion doesn't matter anymore. Your opinion mattered in mediation. Your schools had the ability to argue and make claims and debate about how this was going to be paid out and what should be paid out. But you're handing it over to a judge? Good luck, man. Good luck. It's scary, man. It's scary stuff. And if the Pac-12 schools are all suddenly saddled with huge payouts that they have to pay, and it's court ordered by a judge, there ain't nothing you can do about it. And if the Mountain West schools are sudden, and here's the kind of the difference I would say with the Mountain West schools is I don't think it really matters. UNLV would love that payment money to stay in the Mountain West. They would love it. It was part of the reason why they agreed that they would stay in the first place. But by agreeing to stay in the Mountain West, and the same goes for Air Force as well, and the Mountain West grant of rights that UNLV, Air Force, and all these schools signed explicitly states that one, payment of the exit fees is only given and contingent on those fees being collected in court. And two, if they're not collected in court, who cares? Bubkiss. You're screwed anyway. The Mountain West, its membership is locked in, man. Like there is nothing that's going to happen, in court that's going to change any of its schools' commitment. And I shouldn't say any of its schools' commitment because I don't think UTEP or NIU have signed on to the GOR yet. But especially, the core members, nothing's changing here. So yes, losing these money and these fees in this legal battle could be a massive blow if the Pac-12 goes 10 for 10 and the Mountain West essentially gets nothing. That could be devastating, but it's not going to change the membership of the Mountain West. The Mountain West is going to survive. If it's going to thrive or not, that's kind of the question here. And the Pac-12 membership, isn't going to change either. But the Mountain West is trying to get people to pay them. The Pac-12 is trying to avoid paying. The Mountain West schools, so long as they don't go into crazy debt in reliance of these payments, saying, oh, well, some guy promised me $10,000. I'm going to go spend $10,000 on my credit card and go buy a car. And then that guy doesn't pay you, you're kind of crap out of luck, As long as the Mountain West schools do not spend as if they already have this money, they can survive it. It doesn't mean they're going to thrive. It doesn't mean they're going to be in financially amazing positions like they would have been had they gotten this money. But the Pac-12 schools, they need every dollar of this money. And if all of a sudden a judge that you can't control says that you have to pay, it puts them in a really bad position. And I'm not saying it's going to make the Pac-12, cease to exist or anything. I'm not saying it's an existential threat. But boy, oh boy, are you playing with fire here. And, this is kind of all I want. Maybe I'll do a follow-up video talking about this with somebody else, so I can kind of crystallize my thoughts a little bit better, because this is kind of an initial reaction type video. But The thing that is most disappointing about this is that I don't think this is going to be resolved, before the end of football season. This is going to be hanging over the heads of all of these schools into the fall. And instead of these schools settling their differences and fighting it out and duking it out on the field, we as fans have to sit and talk about court cases. What a disgrace. Like, what a disgrace to the fan experience, as a fan of a college football team or a college athletics team. What a disgrace that we are talking about court cases. And I get it. During the summer, I have no problem branching out, talking about different things, no issue. But once there are games being played, this stuff isn't going anywhere. It's sticking around. It's still going to be in the news. And instead of talking about games being played, we are talking about court. We are not talking about the Pac-12 and the Mountain West fighting or duking it out on the field. We are talking about them doing it in court. And during the season, that's a travesty. That's just an absolute travesty. And so, this is an existential fight, and I'm looking forward to it finally being over. There is a belief, and I think this would be, if I want to give you a ray of optimism at the end of this video, there is a belief that after the September 9th, pre-trial meeting, essentially, with the judge and the parties, that a motion to dismiss, if it's granted, if the PAC, if and I think it's the Mountain West's filing the motion to dismiss, although there's probably cross claims and whatever, or counterclaims or whatever. Um, if it's granted, it could be over in November. If it seems like it's going to get granted, we could see a very reduced settlement, or from either side, or not reduced in the Mountain West case. If it's the Pac-12 having to settle, we could see a settlement come. This July or this September 9th meeting could provide clarity to the parties to help secure them in, to basically help force one of the parties to realize they're going to lose and settle. That's kind of the hope. And genuinely, when people are talking about all these fees that are owed between the conferences, my mindset from the beginning at UNLV is I don't really care what the Mountain West is offering us and paying us. If you can't go out in the community and win football games and fundraise, all of this stuff is chump change. Like, none of it matters. The only thing that matters is winning on the field. And so ultimately, this is such an indictment on the current state of college sports. Regional conferences should absolutely exist. And the fact that we're sitting here in court, debating exit fees and stuff, when this conference situation should be pretty simple. Should be pretty simple. It should be regional, should have regional rivalries, should have schools duking it out that are close to each other. You should have long maintained conference relationships. This is all really dumb. This is really dumb. So guys, that is it for my initial reaction. I will have another video up very soon, hopefully talking with somebody else so we can talk through all this malarkey, and we'll get through it. I'm going to try and be focused on the schools and the student athletes and the games, and not just be a channel that sits around and talks about a court case that none of us have any control over. But this whole process, man, I just think it's gross. I think it's gross. And I don't think any side, I'm not saying it's gross on one side and not gross on the other side. I think the whole thing stinks and reeks of everything that is wrong with college athletics. It just sucks. It sucks for you, the fans. It sucks for the student athletes. It sucks for the athletic departments. It's just awful, and I hate it. And I hope they figure it out. Get your crap together. Figure it out. Let's move on. Let's play football. Let's play basketball. Guys, thank you so much for checking out the channel. My name is Jason Kelly. This is the Let's Run podcast. Please subscribe. Let me know in the comments your thoughts, your opinions. Let me know that you subscribed. I'm trying to hit 500 subscribers here pretty soon. So if you can join on and be a part of the Let's Run podcast, that would be wonderful. And your thoughts are important to me. Email me, comment. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much, and let's run.